3 hours of bone-chilling scary stories, fall asleep to the haunting rain at 3 a.m. In the dead of night, when shadows clung to the walls like eager thieves, tales began to spin with a voice so chilling it could freeze your soul. A storm howled outside, its winds like wailing spirits lost in anguish. Lightning flickered, illuminating twisted trees that bent under the weight of secrets. This was a place steeped in lore, where every creak of the floorboards echoed with the groans of the past, and every drip of rain tapped out a ghostly rhythm that sent shivers down your spine. "Enter if you dare," they said, "but know this, nothing within these four walls is as it seems." The old library, with its dust-kissed tomes and sagging shelves, held stories that twisted minds. There were whispers of a locked room at the far end, rumored to hold untold horrors. Their enigmatic gaze seemed to follow your every move. Just look at the spine of that book, it glimmers a dangerous red, as if alive, yearning to be opened. But who would be brave enough to turn that first page? The very thought sends fear racing through your veins. A flicker of terror held each breath captive as a chill radiated from the depths of the library, tension thickened. The very air felt heavy, charged. Every shudder of wind carried a warning. The townsfolk knew to steer clear, tales of the past hung like a storm cloud over their heads. "You hear what happened to Mary?" they whispered, eyes wide with fear. "They say she went in and never came out. Some say she is still there, trapped in the stories, her voice lost in the silence." Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As that storm raged outside, the heavy rain drummed against the windows, it sounded a desperate plea for attention. Heartbeats quickened with each roll of thunder. The library door creaked open just a fraction, inviting dread in, as though the room itself breathed in unison with the storm. In the distance, a figure loomed. Silhouette against the glow of lightning, it was almost tangible, almost real. But who or what was waiting to greet those bold enough to seek knowledge or perhaps even the truth? The unyielding question hung in the air: what lurked behind that locked door, hidden among the ancient shelves? Every ounce of courage seemed to melt away. You could almost hear the echo of Mary's footsteps fading into the unknown. Would someone dare to take that first step, unlock the mystery? Or would the stories remain just that, a collection of chilling whispers lost to the rain? The heavy silence was a countdown, a warning, leaving you wondering, what happens next? The wind howled with renewed fury, rattling the old windows like desperate fingers. With a noise like a banshee's wail, the door to the library swung open wider, revealing the darkness beyond. It felt as if something inside was beckoning. The air grew colder, prickling against skin, and moisture from the rain started creeping in, melding with the eerie quiet that engulfed the room. Tim's heart pounded like a war drum, each thud reverberating in his ears. The last flicker of lightning lit his path, revealing dust particles swirling in the air like trapped spirits. He had heard the stories too, nights spent huddled with friends, recounting what had happened to Mary. Every brave soul who had entered had walked back out except her. Their voices trembled with memory, weighted with disbelief and terror. Yet now, driven by curiosity and the thrill of the unknown, he stepped closer to the enchanting red book that seemed to pulse with an anxious energy, calling for a challenger. With every step, he could almost hear whispers rising from the shelves, urging him on. "Open it," they seemed to say, "or let the weight of the world crush you." He reached for the handle of the locked door at the far end of the library, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration. But as he turned the handle, a sudden thought struck him. Is he ready to meet whatever lay beyond? As he hesitated, a loud crash of thunder shook the library, snatching away his breath. The sound carved through the air, jolting him out of his daze. In the distance, that lurking figure shifted. Now it was closer, just an outline, but undeniably there, watching. Who or what could it be? Tim's hands trembled, hovering over the handle. Maybe it was wiser to retreat, to turn back before his curiosity led him down a path he couldn't return from. But the stories whispered of knowledge and power gained from the locked room, prompting a battle within him. Should he forge ahead or pull back into the safety of the known? Then from the corner of his eye, he saw movement. The figure stepped into the glow of the next flash of lightning. A cloak, dark and tattered, contrasted violently against the bright light. It didn't just stand, it seemed distorted, almost, hovering unnaturally. Fear gripped Tim as the thunder boomed again, echoing the storm within his heart. "Help me!" A voice cracked through the din, despair raw and piercing. It broke through his thoughts and left an imprint in his mind. Was it Mary? Was she truly trapped beyond that door, desperate for release? With the decision made, an overpowering urge coursed through his veins. He tightened his grip and turned the handle. The door creaked open with an agonizing slowness, almost as if the room was in agony. An absolute darkness flooded out, swallowing the flickering light, and he stepped over the threshold, crossing into the unknown. As he lost sight of the library's walls, the storm outside intensified, the thunder now more like an angry shout. Whispers rose to a crescendo as if the very stories were alive, wrapping him in a cocoon of dread. Was Mary waiting on the other side? Would he uncover the secrets of the library, or was he about to join her in his own tale of horror? The darkness pressed in, thick and heavy, suffocating. He could feel the pulse of the ancient room around him as if it held its breath, waiting in anxious anticipation. And just as he crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind him. What had he unleashed? The answer loomed just ahead, but was it too late to turn back? The silence was deafening. Tim stood in oppressive darkness, his heart hammering like a jackhammer in his chest. He could barely breathe, the air thick with an otherworldly weight. Each pulse of dread tightened around him like a vice. Was this what those stories warned of? He blinked, trying to adjust to the blackness that swallowed him whole. The whispers grew louder, swirling around like a tempest. They seemed to be beckoning him deeper into the shadows. Find her, save her, they urged in a chilling symphony that sent shivers skittering down his spine. Tim shook his head, trying to clear the fog of fear gripping his thoughts. What was this place? With deliberate effort, he lifted a foot, then another, and crept forward. Each step sent a jolt of panic thrumming through his veins. As he ventured deeper, a faint blue glow emerged ahead. It flickered like a distant firefly, beckoning him to explore. Was Mary's spirit guiding him? Had she somehow known he would come? The glow built gradually, illuminating the expanse of the room. Old, crumbling walls lined with cracked shelves appeared, laden with untold tales. But something felt wrong. Everything was off balance, disjointed, as if time itself had splintered within these confines. Then, the glow intensified, revealing her. Mary. Bound to a figure draped in a shrouded fog that fell away as if wrestling against the light. Her eyes, wide and desperate, bore into Tim's with a haunting familiarity. Yet something was amiss. This was not the radiant girl who once appeared in his dreams, but a hollow shell consumed by fear. "Help me," she gasped again. Her voice was soft, laced with panic, trembling like a fragile leaf in a storm. Tim could almost feel her pleading reach out and wrap around him, tugging him towards her. "What is this place?" he shouted, his voice cracking against the silence. "Keep away from him," Mary cried, her face contorting in agony as if she were witnessing something unimaginable. However, the figure standing beside her began to shift, darkening further. Impossibly tall, the figure turned slowly, its inky blackness swirling around like storm clouds crashing against the mountains. It faced Tim, a featureless mask hiding an intent that was both sinister and alluring. "Join us," it hissed, the sound grating against Tim's bones, as echoes of tormented souls rose and fell within those hollow words. "Free her from the burden she carries." Tim stumbled backward, feeling the cold, slick surface of the walls against his palm. Every instinct screamed for him to run, but he compelled to stay, ensnared by the horror enfolding him. "What do you want from me?" he protested, voice quivering under the weight of his fear. The whispers became a whirlwind, demanding his attention. "To be free, you must decide," the figure stated, inching closer, "truth or illusion? Reality or the abyss?" Tim felt his head spin, the lines between reality and nightmare blurred. He must choose. But how could he decide on something he didn't fully understand? Suddenly, Mary's voice pierced through the cacophony, brittle and fragile. "Trust yourself." But those words felt like a double-edged sword, each possibility flooding his mind with dread and uncertainty. What if he chose wrong? As the figure loomed ominously, Tim felt the oppressive darkness closing in. Every heartbeat echoed in his ears, and he sank to his knees, torn between two worlds. The figure stretched a shadowy hand towards him, beckoning, and then, clarity ignited a spark within him. With a fierce resolve, he clutched the red book tightly, feeling it pulse with energy, and shouted, "I choose to fight for her." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. A tremor passed through the dimly lit room, shaking the very ground beneath him. Had he just awakened something far worse? The figure hesitated at his declaration, but the darkness roared to life around them, as if the very universe shifted to respond to his choice. What had Tim awakened, and what would be demanded of him now? Tim braced himself, the weight of his choice pressing down like a coffin lid closing. The room trembled around him, the air thick with an electric tension that crackled and sparked. He could feel it, the darkness writhed with a life of its own, gathering like a storm on the horizon. "What have I done?" he whispered, his voice barely escaping his throat. The shadows pulsed with anger, swirling tighter around him. The figure standing next to Mary, now seemingly more defined, loomed larger, a silhouette etched against the electric blue light. Its voice was a whirlpool, deep and seductive, wrapping around his mind. "Freedom requires sacrifice, Tim," it whispered, the very embodiment of darkness. "Do you cherish her enough to pay the price?" As if spurred on by some unseen force, the walls of the room began to shift, twisting and warping like they were alive. Old books flew off shelves, pages tearing themselves free. The wind of their words howled, a cacophony of voices chanting Tim's name, taunting him. "What will you give?" they cried out, swirling into a broken hymn. Tim felt his heart race, nearly bursting from his chest. He couldn't think about what this meant or even the weight of choice he had made. All he could envision was Mary, bound in terror, and that sheer, desperate look in her eyes. "I will do anything," he shouted, the conviction rising from the depths. The figure's shadow twitched, as if considering his plea. It stepped closer, the heavy shroud around it swirling like mist, but Tim sensed an allure in the darkness, an invitation to surrender. "No," Mary cried, her voice cutting through the tempest around them. "Don't listen to it." Her chains rattled, jingling like distant bells of despair. "Tim, please. You can't trust it. Stop." Tim roared, clenching his fists. The words filled his soul, a rallying cry against despair. The book in his grasp pulsed once more, sending a shock of warmth into his fingertips, sparking a thought. "I choose love." "Love?" The figure spat, amusement dancing in its dark eyes. "Such a fragile thing. Do you understand what you are risking?" "More than you know," Tim countered. "You don't scare me." The defiance surged through him, pushing past the fear surging through his veins like icy water. He saw Mary's eyes widen, hope blooming in the depths of despair. In response, the air thickened, a tempest of shadow and sound pulling him deeper into the fray. The whispers devolved into a screeching cacophony, drowning out his thoughts. The walls around him buckled, old brick crumbling away like tissue paper. He felt the world tremble beneath his knees. "No. Fight it," Mary pleaded, though her voice was nearly lost among the chaos. A perfect stillness fell abruptly, the shadows froze mid-swing. Tim's heart thudded in his ears. The figure inched closer, its maw stretching wide, threatening to consume him whole. Embrace the abyss, Tim, it beckoned softly. It's the only way to save her. For a heartbeat, doubt gnawed at his resolve. But then, from somewhere deep within the red book hummed. Its energy surged like a supernatural lifeline, burning bright against the encroaching dark. I can break this curse. I will banish you. Tim shouted with all his might. The darkness recoiled slightly, a ripple in its form, as if his very words struck a chord. He felt the power emanate from the book, pulsing through his veins like wild electricity. Insignificant human, the figure hissed, suddenly less confident. You can't hope to Aya. A blinding glare erupted from the book, cascading light across the room and forcing back the shadows. The figure shrieked, pressing against the walls as if pushed by an unseen force, but then, as the light illuminated the room, Tim saw it, the shadows clasping Mary intertwined with chains, reality shifting beneath their grip. Tim! Mary's scream shattered his focus. Look out! Before he could react, tendrils of darkness shot toward him with lightning speed. They latched onto his wrists, dragging him toward the void, and terror clawed at his throat. Was he losing her? Was he losing himself? Hold on! He shouted against the growing dark, feeling the cold wrap around him. The battle was just beginning, and he had to fight harder than ever before. The room sank deeper into shadow, roiling chaos only broken by the glowing book in his hand. Time paused, suspended in fear and possibility. He knew he could win, if he could just keep fighting. But, would the light be enough to conquer the darkness? And what other hidden horrors would he have to face to save Mary? As darkness surged like a living entity, Tim felt the profound weight of his next choice pressing down on him. The answer was slipping away, and he was running out of time. The grip of the shadows tightened around Tim, cold fingers slipping along his skin like ice. Panic twisted in his chest as he felt the weight of despair pressing down on him. He watched Mary, her face a canvas of fear and determination, her chains rattling with every anguished breath. Tim! She shouted, her voice piercing the veil of darkness. You have to fight. Don't let it take you. Those words ignited something inside him, a stubborn flame against the consuming dark. With a surge of raw energy, he fought against the tendrils wrapping around his wrists, the energy from the book intensifying, pushing back against the encroaching shadows. Leave her alone. He bellowed, feeling the power of love drive him. The shadows hissed, a sound like steam escaping a kettle, momentarily retreating as if struck by an unseen weapon. The blinding light grew stronger, casting long shadows across the room. Tim could feel it, the energy from the book was shifting, connecting him to some ancient power. But was it enough? Sweat dripped down his brow, mixing with the salt of his fear. Just then, the shadows shuddered, their anger becoming palpable. You cannot hope to resist the inevitable. The figure snarled, its voice drenching the words in venom. You think this light will save you? You're merely delaying the darkness. Suddenly, the walls groaned, and the floor trembled beneath them, as though the very structure of reality was coming undone. Tim twisted in anguish, trying to maintain focus. He couldn't let the dark consume him, couldn't let it claim Mary. Tim! She cried, her voice cracking. The shadows lunged at him, more feral now, desperate in their hunger. Little tendrils shot out, curling around his ankles, pulling him down, with a ferocity that surprised even him. Tim shattered the silence. I choose hope. I choose life. The resonance of his words ignited the book once more, a fervent pulse that pushed back the darkness, illuminating the room in fierce crimson rays. Time stopped. The shadows paused, recoiling as if burned. A shimmer of light burst forth from the book, expanding like a dome, bathing everything in warmth. The chains binding Mary flickered like candlelight, weakening under the radiance. Tim! She sputtered, hope flickering in her eyes, but behind them lay the doubt that haunted them both. Whatever happens, do not let go. With determination rising in his chest, he yanked against the shadows, feeling the restraints around his wrists begin to loose. The room pulsed, the darkness snarling, seeking to reclaim its grip. As he fought to keep hold of that glimmering light, a chilling laugh erupted from the figure. You think you're winning? You're merely choosing a path of greater suffering. I will show you the true meaning of despair. Suddenly, a violent wave of shadows crashed against him like a physical force, a tidal wave of darkness roaring. Tim staggered, the light dimming, and his heart sank as the shadows surged louder, drowning out Mary's voice. In that moment, clarity hit him. He had to confront the fears clawing at his heart. What was it that really terrified him? What did he fear losing most? He took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the book steady in his hand. If you want to take me, then come. But leave her be. The air crackled, and for a fleeting moment, everything felt suspended like the world was holding its breath. He was no longer fighting merely for himself or Mary, he was fighting against the very essence of despair itself. The darkness whispered in his mind, tempting him, but he forced himself to be still. Heart racing, he focused the energy of the book, lifting it high, drawing upon the memories of love and laughter shared with Mary, replacing doubt with a bond that echoed stronger than fear. As he channeled that connection, the shadows lunged again, furious with rage, yet too late. The book erupted in blinding light, illuminating every corner, every crevice. But as the darkness writhed and recoiled, Tim felt a stinging pain shoot through his core, a sharp contrast to the warmth of love surrounding him. A realization gripped him. In his determination to save Mary, had he made a choice that might seal his fate instead? The light flickered, shadows still clawing, and uncertainty rumbled beneath him. Tim couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening was just the beginning. What more would he have to sacrifice, and what truths would he uncover about the darkness that had ensnared them all? As he braced for the next wave of darkness, he understood all choices have consequences. He could only hold on, heart pounding, as shadows surged for one final confrontation. As the blinding light flickered, Tim felt his grip on the book tightening. The pain in his core was a gnawing reminder that power often came at a cost. He pushed through it, focusing on Mary, her face illuminated by the dim glow. Stay with me, Mary. We'll make it. His voice was a lifeline, though doubt gnawed at him like a hungry beast, pulling him closer to despair's edge. The shadows hissed, their frustration echoing off the walls as they regrouped, seething like a swarm of angry wasps. Tim could see them writhing, forming grotesque shapes in the room, their cold whispers intertwining with the cries of trapped souls. With every second ticking by, the air grew thicker, heavy with the stench of fear. Tim. We can break these chains. Mary's voice struggled to rise above the cacophony of darkness, her eyes reflecting victory and despair in equal parts. But the figure loomed closer, its presence choking the light, a thick, suffocating fog that seeped into Tim's bones. You grasp at nothingness, it sneered, darkness pooling around it like a living shadow. This place feeds on your hopes, your fears. You are merely a candle against a tempest. Tim's heart raced, pulse quickening like a drum in his ears. He could feel the very air vibrating with the threat of despair. Yet, he remembered the warmth of Mary's hand in his, he remembered every laugh, every shared moment that brought them to this perilous point. He lifted the book higher, pouring every ounce of his essence into it. I refuse to let you win. The words came out raw and fierce, slicing through the noise swirling around them. The beams of light shot out in radiant bursts, purging the shadows that attempted to tighten their grip. Futile. The figure howled, its voice darker and deeper, reverberating like thunder through the confined space. Your defiance only serves to strengthen my resolve. Tendrils surged forward, breaking through the flickering barrier of light with a vengeance. Tim felt a shiver run down his spine as they grazed his skin, a stinging contrast to the brilliance surrounding him. He staggered but fought to stay upright. In that moment, raw terror gripped him, a specter of loss that he couldn't shake. What if this was the end? What if all he had done was for naught? Tim. Mary's scream shattered the air, a desperate plea that cut through the shadows. He glanced at her, her chains rattled violently, the light flaring wildly. Each flicker seemed to fight back the shadows, but the figure only laughed, a chilling sound that sent ice through Tim's veins. Suddenly, Mary's chains began to fracture under the onslaught of light. Hope surged within him, igniting a flame against the cold. With every ounce of strength he had left, he forced his will into the book. We will not be defeated. Not today. The shadows recoiled, shrieking, the air crackled with energy. For a fleeting moment, their clamor faded to silence, as if the universe paused to take heed of his declaration. Then, with a final surge, Tim thrust the book towards the figure, a blinding beam cutting through the thick darkness like a knife, but then it happened. The light faltered, and the shadows surged forth, reclaiming lost ground. The figure let out a roar, and Tim felt a lurch in his stomach, a gut-wrenching realization of the impending doom. Tim! Mary's voice rang like a bell, shattering the insulated silence. You can't let go. Fight! His heart raced uncontrollably, pounding like a warning drum in his chest. The rift between hope and despair had narrowed to a razor's edge. What if the light turned on him, extinguished everything they had fought for? Trapped in this battle of wills, Tim had to make a choice. Would he continue to resist and risk losing everything, or would succumbing to despair be the end of the fight? Darkness swirled dangerously close, he could feel its icy breath spreading across his skin. There was only one path forward, and it seemed it would demand a price far greater than he had ever anticipated. As he steeled himself for the choice ahead, a chilling thought crept into his mind. What if losing was the only way to truly save her? And just as he pondered, the shadows surged, clawing towards him with renewed ferocity. What had he gotten them into? The shadows lunged again, feral and insatiable, crashing into Tim like a tidal wave. Each tendril wrapped around him, squeezing tighter, draining his light, his resolve. Tim felt every shred of strength slipping away, his vision blurring as fear's icy fingers encircled his throat. Hold on, Tim. Don't let them take you. Mary's voice reverberated in the chaos, a fragile thread that sought to counteract the despair that sought to fill him. It felt miles away now, the warmth of her presence fighting against the bone-chilling cold creeping into his very soul. He strained against the shadows, forcing himself to remember the moments they shared, the laughter, the dreams, that spark of hope glowing brighter than the darkness surrounding them. I won't abandon you, Mary. The words gushed forth, fervent, a desperate mantra amid the tempest, but as he summoned everything within him, it felt like pouring water into a bucket with a gaping hole. The shadows laughed, a cacophony of mocking voices enveloping him, shattering his thoughts. Your love is weak, they hissed, amalgamating into a singular, grotesque face shifting in the darkness. You're nothing but a fool wielding a flickering flame, and soon your flame will be snuffed out. Tim's heart instantly felt like lead, the world around him crumbling. Could he really win? Could he protect her? He wanted to scream, to fight back with everything he had, but as the shadowy figure held his gaze, he saw a reflection of himself weak, helpless, and despair threatened to consume him whole. He staggered back, tumbling to his knees as the figures pressed closer, and dread seeped deeper into his bones. It's over, Tim, the voice rang, flat and cold. You cannot save her, and you certainly cannot save yourself. In that moment of grief, he caught Mary's gaze once more. Her warmth radiated even through the chains, illuminating a flicker of hope in the overwhelming dark. Tim! She cried, urgency lacing her words. Focus. The book, remember what it signifies. He blinked back tears, fighting against the consuming fear. The book. It wasn't just a collection of spells or incantations, it was a vessel, a testament to everything they had battled, everything they had hoped for. Every struggle and every sacrifice poured into those pages. Energy surged through him as he reached for it, fingers brushing the binding. No. No. The figure screeched, dark tendrils reaching desperately to snatch the book away, but Tim resisted with newfound strength. He raised the tome high, this ends now. Channeled anger ignited within him, fueling every flicker of light, every memory of joy with Mary, and he let loose a blast of brilliance. The walls trembled, shadows shrieked as they pulled back, trying to shield themselves from the onslaught. But with the light came a caused pain shot through him like knives, a vortex of agony gnawing at his flesh and soul. Tim gasped, feeling the torturous pull of despair threatening to reclaim him. It was both liberating and horrifying, knowing he could harness the energy, but at what price? Fight it, Tim. We're almost there. Mary's encouragement was like a balm healing the wounds of doubt. Instead of shrinking from the pain, he embraced it, a raw, pulsating power that thrummed through his veins, but as the shadow recoiled under the brilliance, their snarls transforming into agonizing screams, something dark twisted within those shadows. They didn't just retreat, they congealed, plotting something far more sinister. Tim, be careful. Mary shouted, urgency twisting her voice. In that instant, a new figure emerged from the swirling dark, larger and far more terrifying. It had eyes that gleamed with malevolence, claws sharp enough to rip through the very fabric of light itself. Tim's heart sank. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It had escalated into a war. He could feel it deep in his bones. The war was coming for them both, and they were mere players in a game he hardly understood. Would the light he wielded be enough? Or had he just unwittingly awakened something even worse? The question hung thick in the air, echoing through the chaos like a death knell, a prelude to an approaching storm. The darkness thickened, curling like smoke, wrapping around Tim's limbs, slowing his movements. The larger figure stepped forward, a grotesque silhouette moving with an ominous grace. Its eyes pierced through the gloom, two flickering lanterns of raw malice. Every heartbeat thundered painfully in Tim's chest as he tried to find his footing. Tim. Mary's voice shattered through the chaos again, desperate and unyielding. You have to believe in the light. It's more than just a weapon, it's who you are. Breathing heavily, he clenched the book to his chest. The warmth was a lifeline tugging him back from the precipice. I want to let them take you, he vowed. The words pulled the light from deep within him, a light that seemed to resonate with the very pages of the book, as if the histories and stories within were awakening, lending him their strength. The figure laughed, the sound rumbling like thunder. You think you can defeat us with mere memories? They are nothing but vapor, Tim. It lunged, a flash of claws tearing through the air, aiming straight for his heart. Tim reacted instinctively, thrusting the book forward. Light exploded from it, cascading everywhere like fire igniting a night sky. The brilliance struck the creature, sending it staggering back, its form twisting in agony. But even as it flinched, shadows crawled from the corners, reforming and thickening, dark hunger glistening in their depths. No! Mary shouted, her chains rattling as she strained against them. You're only pushing them back for now. Hold on to the light, Tim. Each pulse of energy drained him further, the burden of channeling so much power taking its toll. Doubt gnawed at him. What if this wasn't enough? What if he faltered? The shadows sensed his wavering spirit, surging forward in a ravenous tide, hungry to consume the flickers of light he fought desperately to maintain. Stay away! Tim screamed, as he thrust the book toward the oncoming wave. It blazed bright, but the shadows didn't retreat. They devoured the illumination, feeding off his fear, rippling with dark delight. What are you? Tim whispered, dread pooling inside him, a chill crawling beneath his skin. You already know, the shadow hissed, twisting into a nightmarish visage. We are your doubts, your fears personified, the truths you hide from, Tim. You think this light can protect you? It's weak, just like you. Anguish tore through him, the truth cut deeper than any claw could. Every time he had faltered, every moment of self-doubt flashed before him. Their words dug into his mind like poison. He felt the shadows grip him tighter, threatening to swallow him whole. No. I will not succumb. He cried out, the defiance bursting from his lips like a firework igniting the dim sky. But there was a riptide inside him, a potent dread that whispered for him to surrender. Each exhalation seemed to peel away his resolve, the air feeling heavier, laden with despair. That a sudden flicker of movement caught his eye. Mary, bound but unbroken, her eyes shining with fierce determination. Tim. Remember the power of love. We fought together, remember? The light doesn't just come from you, it comes from us. Tim's heart surged at her words. They had weathered storms together. He was not alone in this battle. The book pulsed violently as if responding to his renewed strength. Clutching it tighter, he felt warmth spreading from his core, blazing with every moment they shared, memories flooding him like a dam bursting. With newfound determination, he took a step forward. I manifest what we are together, he declared, lifting the book high once more, and releasing a beam brighter than before, but as Tim focused, the shadows writhed in vexation, hissing and screeching, their form contorting and multiplying. Something deeper was taking shape, something ancient and more powerful than he had ever anticipated. What is happening? He gasped, dread blossoming anew. The shifting figure loomed, larger than life, its presence radiating an aura that felt smothering. Fear has awakened the source, it growled, low and rumbling, its voice vibrating through Tim's bones that he felt the walls of the space closing in, the shadows closing ranks, and his hope wavering like a candle in the wind. It was a battle he might not win, but there was no turning back. The tension stretched taut, a bowstring ready to snap, with eyes wide, Tim braced himself, ready for what unspeakable horror the shadows would unleash. What fresh terror awaited them in this unending fight? Would their love endure against the darkness, or were they merely amplifying their doom? The shadows congealed, swirling around Tim as if alive, their whispers becoming a chorus that clawed at his mind. He staggered, each pulse of dark energy slamming into him like a weighty battering ram. No, he felt the flickers of light within him dim, almost snuffing out. Mary's voice cut through the murky haze. Tim. You need to push through. Trust what we've built together. Her chains rattled again, the sound mingling with the specter's chaotic whispers that he drew a shaky breath, remembering every moment spent with her. The laughter, the arguments, the soft moments shared under starlit skies. It wasn't just memories, it was a bond stronger than fear. Fingers trembling, he steadied the book, channeling his thoughts into the pages that radiated warmth. I am not alone. We are stronger together. Light burst from him again, illuminating the shadows, but this time it had a life of its own. It twisted, crackled, and pulsed fueled by their connection. Foolish boy. The lurking figure spat, its voice oozing contempt. Your love will not save you. It will only draw more darkness. As the shadows lashed out, Tim felt the pain of their truth hit home. He focused on the warmth from Mary, digging deep into that space where their affection lived. You don't know us. He shouted defiantly, a fire catching in his chest. Suddenly, a surge of energy washed over him, the book vibrating violently. The pages fluttered, revealing a vibrant tapestry of light and hope. Each flickering line glowed as if the love they had shared was alive, dancing around like playful spirits. The larger shadow recoiled, its form writhing in rage, fight momentarily leaving it. This isn't over. You're only delaying the inevitable. Rage dripped from every word, and the creature expanded, growing larger, angrier, feeding off its desperation to suppress what Tim had awakened. Tim stood his ground, resolute. It's never over until the light goes out. The light within surged, this time a blinding explosion that filled the ancient space. It streamed toward the dark denizens, the space trembling. With a visceral scream, the larger shadow lunged at him again, claws extended, but he was ready. Using every ounce of energy left, he shot the radiant beam of light directly into the heart of the creature. It struck true, and the room ignited in a brilliant halo, yet, just as he thought he might have the upper hand, the shadows flickered in response, morphing into silhouettes of people he recognized, figures from his past, doubts manifesting before him. Look! All the times you faltered. They taunted, their voices blending together in a mocking cacophony. They'll swallow you whole. Every one of their accusations pierced his heart. For a split second, he faltered, fear clawing at him, memories of failures threatening to drag him down. But Mary's fierce energy surged beside him, pulling him back from that precipice. We're not our past defeats. Remember what we've built. She shouted, her chains vibrating with her conviction. Steeling himself, Tim realized this battle wouldn't just be against the shadows, it was about facing his inner demons too. I am not weak. He roared, holding the book high as a beacon, channeling every shred of love, support, and beauty that Mary had gifted him. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in agony, but from the depths, something far more sinister began to manifest. A vast maw opened wide among the shadows, a gaping void that seemed to suck the very light from existence. No. I want to let you take anything else. Tim shouted as an icy wave of panic surged. The intensity of the darkness threatened to crush all hope. Tim! Mary cried, her voice breaking through the chaos. We need to fight this together. Trust the love. Tim stood tall, the book vibrating fiercely, the light inside him raging. He took a deep breath, focusing on Mary, pulling all their shared experiences, their laughter, their pain, and the unyielding strength they drew from each other. In the split second that followed, as shadows swarmed to overpower, the book exploded with brilliant light again, bright enough to pierce through the oppressive darkness. But would it be enough? As the blinding waves rushed forward, an unholy roar echoed in response. What could emerge from such overwhelming darkness? And would it unravel the very bond that buoyed them before? Tim struggled to endure the chaos, his mind racing. Was the light they forged together strong enough to face the oncoming storm? The world erupted in brilliance. Tim stood firm, the warmth radiating from the red book surrounding him and Mary, pushing back the consuming darkness. The shadows recoiled in pain, screeching like banshees, their twisted forms writhing against the light, yearning to devour the hope now shining between them. We're stronger together. Tim shouted, summoning their shared moments of laughter, warmth, and love, channeling every ounce of their connection into the book. The light grew, blistering and fierce, illuminating the entire room like dawn breaking after endless night. Mary looked at him, her eyes brimming with both fear and belief. Don't let it steal your heart. She pleaded, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Tim's heart raced, fueled by her determined gaze. I want he vowed, knowing the darkness sought to engulf not just their bodies but their spirits. The shadows shrieked, swirling, gathering themselves in an attempt to consolidate their power against the onslaught of light. As Tim held the book high, a surge of strength coursed through him, almost as if the very stories held within it were alive, backing him against despair. You cannot have us. He roared, the echoes of his words striking the shadows like a whip. The light expanded explosively, spilling warmth across the walls, mingling with the cold dread that had loomed for too long. But within the shadows, a new presence emerged, dark and looming, a creature formed from all Tim's deepest fears, its shape shifting into familiar faces coated in darkness. Look upon your failures. It howled, manipulating memories into a haunting facade. You will never escape what you are. You will lose her too. Tim stumbled, the revelation striking him hard. Memories of every moment he had felt inadequate, every time he had considered giving up, they swarmed around him, clawing at his resolve. The darkness closed in, threatening to suffocate all light. No. He screamed, pushing back with all his might. That's not who I am. I refuse to let you dictate my worth. Mary's chains rattled, and from the corner of his eye, he saw her expression shift, determined, fierce. Fight it, Tim. Remember us. With newfound clarity, he took a stance, each heartbeat sinking with the blaze growing inside him. The book pulsed in response, every word a testament to their bond, their fight. I am not alone. I choose love. This time the rippling wave of energy surged forward, charged with every memory, every moment, cascading through the shadows like molten silver, rending their grasp apart. The creature latched onto that wave of light, screeching, thrashing in desperation, but as it collided with the sorrow it fed on, the light erupted. It consumed the darkness like wildfire, engulfing the hate and fear in a radiant explosion that sent shockwaves through the room, Tim felt a rush of air collide with him as if releasing a breath held for too long. The swirling mass of shadows began to fracture, splintering into tiny, hissing forms that scattered like roaches exposed to light. As the explosion of brilliance reached the figure, it shrieked, slowly dissolving into wisps of smoke. "You fool!" it howled. "You cannot hope to forget we are eternal." But with that declaration, defeat sank into its voice, weakness creeping in as light enveloped everything. The shadows faded, sucked back into the ancient void from which they had emerged, banished by the power of love and the strength of memories. Tim let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, hope flooding his veins. The room shimmered with warmth, the air heavy with an invigorating energy, and he felt Mary break the final chains that bound her. She stood before him, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with life once more. They rushed into each other's arms, a fusion of love that felt like salvation. "I thought I lost you," she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. "Never," Tim whispered, pressing his forehead against hers. "I'll never let the darkness take you or me again." Outside, the tempest had receded. The storm clouds drifted away, unveiling a star-speckled sky. Each star a promise of brighter days to come. The library, now free of its sinister grasp, seemed to sigh with relief, the weight of centuries lifted. As they turned to leave, hand in hand, the book shimmered behind them, wonders still waiting between its pages. "We'll come back," Tim said, "and write our own stories." Together, they stepped back into the world, resolute and alive, knowing that no darkness could ever overshadow their light again. Now, don't think this story ends here. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. I mean it, smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. They need to know this was a ride. And don't hold back. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Tim and Mary's epic battle. What did you think? Finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us keep the story alive together.